Glenn here, Monster Guitars. I know some of you will be waiting with bated breath for me to finish the Toronado project. And I'm going to make a neck of a different scale, of the right scale, to go with the body that I've already made. However, the seller in another country has been sending me the wrong fretboards. They're the wrong number of frets, and he's done it a couple of times, and each time said, "Oh, well, I'm very sorry, keep that one, I'll send you the right one." Anyway, that will be resolved soon, I am sure. And hey, I've got free fretboards. And I will start making my own soon. But in the meantime, I'm going to show you another project that I have been working on at the same time. I've always got several things on the go. So, here we go. So currently, in the Monster Guitars workshop is this monstrosity, I guess appropriate place for it to be in the Monster Guitars workshop. This is, when we talk about reclaimed timber, this is out of an old building. It's I guess it qualifies as a beam. It's very large, and it's made from New Zealand rimu timber, which is very nice. I have used it previously on a couple of instruments. It made up the body of the Blackwood Telecaster. So I'm going to use this, firstly cut off a piece and try to make it usable, on an as yet unnamed project, which is basically a coffin. That's a guitar. So, is this going to be wide enough already? I mean, I'm going to lose some of that width, surely, but if I don't, all I need is one point that's wide enough. Oh, it's moving around a bit. Possibly I will be able to use that width as is, maybe, but if not, that's okay. I can make a couple of pieces and glue them together. Right, let's see what I can get out of this. So now I've got this colossus of a thing clamped up on my bench so that I can cut off a piece to make a guitar from. I can see that it's just, I mean, maybe in its current state it's as wide as the template, but I'm going to want to plane that back a little. So this is, I'll have to make a more than a one-piece neck, more than a one-piece body. I had hoped to be able to do a one-piece. I've not done that before, but that's okay. So I'll cut out what I want, get it in reasonable condition, then cut it down the middle and sandwich something else between the two. So I've cleaned up a piece of that wood and thicknessed it and put it across the bandsaw and cut it in half. I can see the knot on the surface, but it turned out to be a pretty major defect on the inside. I'm not going to worry about that too much, as long as I sandwich a big enough piece between these two pieces. Because it's a coffin shape and I'm cutting the corners off, I'll make those on the outside, so they'll be cut off entirely. So I'm not at all worried about that. I'm going to get these jointed now, and then I'll continue to thickness them down to about 45 mils. This is going to be a reasonably thick guitar, because it's 45 mils plus the top. And then I'm going to use a piece of tawa to go between them. Now I've thicknessed all the pieces that I'm going to use over there in the thicknesser, and what I'm left with is something that is just slightly wider than I need, which is really ideal. So I've got two pieces of rimu, and a reasonably thin piece of tawa down the middle. Nice. What would be really nice is, because you can see how nice the interior of rimu can be, it would be really nice to have, so this is 45 mils thick, it would be nice to get a piece of rimu that was, say, 90 mils thick and wide enough for half the body, and then I could have book matched it, because you can see the sort of effect you would get with a book matched body made from that stuff. It would be incredible, but nonetheless, this is going to look quite nice. So we'll just get that glued up now. And there it is, gluing silently, without a peep. Shh. The glue is dry, and I've put this body blank through the thicknesser. Now, this is the surface on which I'll be gluing the top when the time comes to do that. And although I want the back to be really nice and smooth, and although I want the thickness all over the front to be the same, it's not important that it's very smooth. In fact, a slightly rough surface is beneficial for a glue job like this. So I've actually, once it came out of the thicknesser, I went over it with my random orbital sander with some 80 grit paper. You could have even gone 60, maybe even 40, but the point is not really smooth stuff. Now, although this is the top, well, not the top of the guitar, but the top of the blank, it's the back that I'm going to be seeing. So I've used the back to draw the shape on. It's a symmetrical shape, so it's nice and simple. It doesn't matter whether you draw it on the front and the back. It's not book matched because I didn't have a piece of wood thick enough to do that, but I've managed to avoid all the nasty bits on both sides. So I'll just cut it out. Okay, that's starting to look very coffin-y. Now, look, I'm not even going to use the template to route this out to shape. That was really just a cutting guide. They're straight lines, right? It's not like I have to carefully route the curves. So I'm just going to use my belt sander for the long lines and my disc sander for the short lines to get this thing nice and flat on the edges. I've got a couple of what I think are interesting design ideas for this guitar. One of them, though, and it's not even one that I originally planned, but I think it's going to work well with the others, is, so on the back, I have that pale strip down the middle. I've got another piece of that same wood, some tawa, with some rather nice grain on it, actually. And I would like to see, and it would fit well with the coffin theme, a cross on the back. So what I will do is route a channel on the back of this guitar in the right position. Well, I'll draw where it needs to go first. So imagine that I have drawn lines on indicating where I want this cross beam to go. Then I will place it in the right spot. And I've just jointed the edges of some, well, it's not scrap MDF, it's some templates that I have, but having a straight edge is a fine addition to make to any template, I guess. It makes no difference. And I'm going to make a, not really a jig, it's a other edge. Not really a jig, but just a place holder for where I want that channel to be. And I'll clamp these in place. I'll make them nice and tight, clamp them down, then remove that piece of wood and use a flush trim router bit to route the channel out at the appropriate depth. Now, most of the problems I have, or many of the problems that I have when things go wrong are because of routers. From the damage to my body to the damage to my work. Anyway, I had to replace the piece of wood with a slightly wider one because I damaged the edge due to my plunge router not staying plunged, but I'm working on that. Anyway, that still works, that's fine. So now, although not entirely, because you see there's a little bit of tear out where I routed that channel, and a little bit of tear out when I routed there. I'm going to get around that by making the whole guitar very slightly smaller by sanding the edges again. I mean, it's not an ideal situation, but I think that's the simplest way of getting around it. So now I just cut these, route them to the shape of the body. I'll cut these, no, glue it in first, then cut them, then route them to the shape of the body, and then deal with that little bit of tear out on each side. But that's more or less what I was going for. Now, do I have a scraper somewhere? Yes, I do. I'm using Gorilla Glue because a seamless join is important, and Gorilla Glue is, I think I've said it before, it is quite forgiving in that it expands and does make quite a neat join at the seam, even though it's really messy initially because it expands and you've got to scrape and clean off that which you don't need. I do find the end result looks a little bit nicer.